Okay, good morning again, Ershaz. We are doing Tes Amud Aleph today. We're starting at the bottom part of Ches Amud Beis. The Gemara says as follows: Rabbi Gamliel Omer. You remember what the Mishnah said? The Mishnah told us that according to Rabbi Gamliel, you have until Amud Hashachar, you have until Alais in order to be able to say Kriyash Mashal Arvis, even though the Chacham had said they only have until Chatzos. According to Gamliel, no. Mitzvahs on Amud Hashachar. But the reason why the Chacham said you have until Chatzos is Kedei Laharchik as Adam Mino Avera. Now we're going on that part of the Mishnah over here. It says the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel, Halacha Rabbi Gamliel. Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel says that the halacha is like Rabbi Gamliel. Tanya Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai Omer. Shimon ben Yochai supposedly is we're going to have two versions of this, but in this version we're going to say Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai said the following. Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai taught, there are times when a person is going to say Shema two times at night. Achas kredim sheyal amud hashachar, v'achas la'achar sheyal amud hashachar. The person is going to say Kriya Shema two times a night, once before Alois and once after Alois. And he's going to be his chiyuv to say Shema both at night and by day. So in other words, according to this version of Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai is saying a person is able to say Shema right before Alois, and he'll be Yotze the Kriya Shema for the nighttime, and then right after Alois, he's going to say the Kriya Shema of the morning and be Yotze for the morning. Says the Gemara, I don't understand. You're saying that this is what the person is going to do. It's going to be Yotze kasha. But what you say doesn't really make sense, because according to the way Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai opened this position, was what he said was Pa'am sha'adam ker Kriya Shema shtei pa'am balayla. You said that a person is going to say over the Shema two times at night. So what's the mashma? It's Amars Pa'am Sha'adam ker Kriya Shema shtei pa'am balayla. Amal achash sheya'ala amud hashachar laylahu. What it seems like then is that even after Alois is still considered night. So if it's after Alois, it's still considered the evening. And nevertheless, he's saying the person is able to be Yaitz, the mitzvah of Kriya Shema, both of the evening and of the night. So of the night, he's saying the Kriya Shema right before Alois, and of the day, he's saying it right after Alois. But you're calling that period of time Lila. So how is it possible that the person is able to be Yaitz the Kriya Shema of the day? Alma Yamamu. So you see, it's really the daytime. Then you're calling it Laila. You're calling it the person able to be Yaitz two times Shema in the nighttime, once for the day and once for the night. Is it night or is it day? You call it the time after Allah's night, and yet you say you're able to be Yaitz in the midst of Kriya Shema for the day. How could it be? Says the Gemara, no, La'ilam. The way you have to understand is like this: really, it's part of the night. Even after Alois is still considered part of the night. And this that we call it the day is the Ika Inish the Kaima Bahik. There are people who get up at that time. So there is an element of the day aspect of it after Alois, even though it's still night, it's still dark, it's still has some people who get up, so that's why it has an aspect of Yom, and therefore you're able to be Yotze the Kriya Shema of the day in it. This is version one. Maybe what we will do is first do the second version and then go into a little bit of the raid on it, the Mafarshim, etc. So Amar Rav Acha bar Chanina, Amar Rav Shimon Levi, Halacha Rav Shimon Yochai. Rav Acha bar Chanina says that Halacha is like Rav Shimon Yochai. Fine. Igi the Masal Rav Acha bar Chanina, Ahod the Tanya, Rav Shimon Yochai, Rav Shimon Rekiva. So those that want to say that this word of Rav Acha bar Chanina, it says that Halacha is like Rav Shimon Yochai, it's on a different price. So Rav Shimon Yochai says the name of Rabbi Kiva. Notice that this version of what the position of Shimon Yochai is coming out of the name of Rabbi Akiva. In the first version, it didn't say anything about Rabbi Akiva, right? So this is the second version. So in the second version, it's coming out of the name of Rabbi Akiva. What is he saying? It comes out sometimes that a person says the Shema two times by day. A person says Shema two times by day, once before Nates and once after Nates. The person is going to be Yotze to the mitzvah of Shema before Nates for the nighttime. Even though what is the mitzvah that we're saying that you're being Yotze to the Shema of the evening by day. So again, the Gemara asks the same kasha. Gufa kasha. You say that what we're dealing with is a person going to be Mikayim on the mitzvah of Kriya Shema by day. He's going to be, what is going to be Mekayim when he says 2 times Shema by day? He's going to be Mekayim one of the day and one of the night. We see clearly before Nathan is considered the day. But a ton of years, he's being able to Mekayim the mitzvah both of the day and the night Shema. How can it be Mekayim the mitzvah of the night Shema before Nate when it's already considered the daytime? Al Maleli, you see it's still the night. The Moshe says, no, it's really, we're not on top of tests, right? It's really considered the day, or the Korle Laila, and this that we consider it the night enough that you can still say Shema, as Dika Inish, they're going to be the people still sleeping before Nate's, right? After Alayis, before Nate's, there's still people sleeping, so we consider that a night enough that you can still say Shema. And then here we have another, again, idea that Rav Shimon Levi says that the halacha is like Rav Shimon Ben Yochai, in this case, the name of Rabbi Akiva. All right, so just take a step back for a second. What we're saying is as follows. 2 different members, okay? One member says that you're able to mekayim the mitzvah of Kriyat Shema of Shachris after Alais. The other member says you're able to mekayim the mitzvah of Kriyat Shema of Arvis before Nates. Right? So we have a time between Alais and Nates. What are you able to mekayim during that time? One version of this member of Rav Shimon Yochai says you can mekayim at that time the Kriyat Shema of Arvis after Alais before Nates. And the other version says that you're able to mekayim before Nates the Kriyat Shema of, right? You're able to mekayim before Nates the Kriyat Shema of Arvis. Good. So one is saying you have the after Alais, you're able to mekayim the mitzvah of Kriyat Shema of Shachris, and one is before Nates, you're able to mekayim the Kriyat Shema of Arvis. But that's the same time, right? After Alais, before Nates, one version is saying you have the Kriyat Shema of Shachris, one version is saying you have the Kriyat Shema of Arvis. How could it be? The stira? The Rosh says it's not a stira. Number one version is Rav Shimon Yochai saying it in the name of himself. The other version of Shimon Yochai saying the name of Rabbi Akiva. So it could be it's not even a stira. What about in halacha? Let's understand that for a second. What did the Mishnah say about Rabbi Gamliel? Rabbi Gamliel told us that what's the halacha? The halacha is you not until chatzai for Shema of the evening. The halacha is you can say Shema until not chatzai. According to Rabbi Gamliel, when you can say Shema of the Arba still? Until Alais. And we just opened up this Gemara by saying what? Halacha like Rabbi Gamliel. The halacha is like Rabbi Gamliel. Now we say Tanya of Shemei Chai, and then we have Rabbi Achim saying the name of Shimon Levi, halacha of Shemei Chai, or halacha of Shemei Chai b'Shem Rabbi Akiva. So what's going on here? We just said that the halacha is like Rabbi Gamliel, which means that you have for Kriyat Shema Shel Arvis until Alais. And now we're saying that at least in one of the versions, right, of that the halacha is like Shemei Chai. What we're really saying is that you can say the Shema of Arvis after Alais. Yes? You can say the Kriyat Shema of Arvis after Alais. So how could it be if the halacha is like Rabbi Gamliel? So what's coming out here, and this is in fact how it's brought down the halacha, is a new point. It is true that Rabbi Gamliel says, and the black letter law is that you could say Kriyat Shema of Arvis until Alais. But b'shas hadchak, this is not a machlekes with what we're saying. We pass like a middle. That's the real halacha. We're telling you now. Also, sometimes the shas hadchak situation, and shas hadchak situation, you're able to say Kriyat Shema of Arvis even later, even after Alais, in a shas hadchak situation. Good. That's the way the halacha is passed in Shulchan Aruch. Before we get to Shulchan Aruch, though, I wanted to also do. Taisus asks 2 questions. Both the bottom Taisus on Ches and the top Taisus on Tes. He asks the same exact question, and he comes out with the same exact answer. Taisus says, "Tema im ken lema ribusa shepam yeshanam kari lachas shel manashachas shnei pam and viet mishum shachas and mishum arvis." The Taisus says, if what you're saying is that after Alais, since there are people who are still sleeping, that we consider that nighttime, and therefore you could still be mekayim in the mitzvah of Kriyat Shema of Arvis even after Alais. The Torah says, wouldn't it even be more cool if that's really the daytime to just say, hey, you could do 2 times Shema. You could do Shema of the Arvis, and you could do Shema of the Shachris after Alais. So Torah says, no, we didn't say that. You know why we didn't say that? Really, it's the nighttime. What does it mean when the Gemara says really it's the nighttime? It's b'shar mitzvahs, the be'inam b'hu yom k'may tefillin v'tzitas. There's a one rule for Shema and one rule for other things. So with regards to tefillin, with regards to tzitzis, it's still considered the nighttime. You can't be here to those mitzvahs. You got to wait. But the Shema is a special exception. For the Shema, it will already be considered the daytime because there are people getting up. And therefore, even though it's night with regards to these other mitzvahs, it is day for Shema. So therefore, in a Shas Chak situation, a person can end up saying Shema after for the day, after Alois, according to the first version. Does that make sense? I know it's not the easiest cheshbon in the whole, but that's what Taisus is coming at, and that's the part of the Gemara. That's what we don't have to tell you. That's what we're not telling you, that you could do 2 times Shema, right? After Alois, be doing the Kriya Shema of Arves, because it's still the night and people are still sleeping, and do the Kriya Shema of Shachas because it's already the day. You're gonna have to wait. That's what we will see in Halakha. We have to wait. Okay? And the same question is asked in the test on top of test on Aleph. Test asked the same question. So now we'll look at Shulchan Aruch just so you see how it plays itself out. This is what Shulchan Aruch is writing in Archaim Nun Ches. Mishu Einis. Somebody who's in Einis. Kigoin. Shoyam Mashkim L'Sisel Derech. B'mokim Gedudei Chayav Listim. Somebody who's in Einis, he's going to go, he has to get up and go on the road. He has to take a trip. There's going to be problems on the trip, so he has got to get out whenever everybody's leaving. He doesn't have time. He's got to go. He doesn't have time to sit down and do a proper Shema. So he's able to say the Kriya Shema of the day the moment Allah hits. The Kevan Shalom Shachar Shaper Korean Baby Kumecha. Because the moment that it's Alois, it's already considered Kumecha. Why? Because there are people getting up by that time. The Gam Shaper Mikri Yitzhar, and it's already considered Yitzhar. So you can say the Brachot Shema, you can say Shema, again, in a Shas of Chag situation. But if he doesn't really have a huge rush, then I feel so then he should really wait. He should wait until the actual Zman. Now, the Mechaber continues and says, Im kar misha olam rashachar. What happens if he read it early, even though he wasn't really an Einus? Yatsa b'di'avad. Then he is still Yatsa b'di'avad. Im kar b'lei brachos yaksel l'kors of his man. If you read it without brachos, you should say it again with the brachos later on. And now we get to the question that you asked about saying both. Why don't we say both? Taisus' question, like, why don't you not just say both? So the Mechaber writes in Halacha Hey, for whatever reason, the person was in Einus, he wasn't able to say the Shema at night until Alais. So So because it's not yet Nate, you can still say Shema of Arvis. And you will be Yotze your mitzvah of Kriya Shema of Arvis, even though it's already after Alois. Let's say Sladerech, and if he was in Einus at that time to go on the road, nothing to do the Chayav list and what it is, whatever, like Kari Oz Kriya Shema Pam Shenis. Let's say Kriya Shema Shal Yom. We shouldn't now say also the Kriya Shema of the day, just do both together. Once you've made it for yourself that this time is considered the evening time, and you're taking this time to say Kriya Shema of Arvis, you cannot now say, oh, I'm going to also say Kriya Shema of Shacharis. If you've made this space between Alois and Nates to be evening for you, then it's evening for you. And you cannot do both. It will be a tired to disaster for you. So in effect, you get the choice. We end up passing like both. Right? We end up passing like both members of Shemei Chai, one in the name of Rabbi Kiva, one in the name of himself, and it's applying both in the situations of Shas at Chag. And what it comes out is then the following: if a person didn't have the ability to say Kriya Shema of Arvis before Alois, the Shas at Chag situation, it was an Einus, whatever it was, then he could say Kriya Shema of Arvis after Alois. And if a situation, a person has to leave early on the road, whatever, again, Shas Tachak situation, he could say Kriya Shema of Shachris before Nates. But what he can't do is he can't say Kriya Shema of Arvis after Alois and Kriya Shema of Shachris before Nates and make out that time that it's both his evening and his daytime. And that will depend on the specific situation of a person. Good? Okay. All right. So that is the basics of this Gemara. The Gemara continues. Amar Rabbi Zera, Ubilvan Shalayim Hashkivenu. We say that the person cannot have said, he shouldn't be saying Hashkivenu. Now, this is a machlekes between Rashi and Tosfos. What is the situation we're talking about where he didn't say Hashkivenu? So look at Tosfos. Tosfos says, Ubilvan Shalay Yomar Hashkivenu. What does that mean? Perish Bekuntris. Amilso de Reb Shimon Bar. This is going on the member of Shimon Bar that he said the Kare Kaidem Shayala Amud Shachar, that a person is able to say the Kriya Shema of Arvis right before Alois. So we're talking about the first Memra, where a person is going to end up saying the Kriya Shema of Arvis right before Alois and the Kriya Shema of Shachar right after Alois. So Rashi's telling you that you shouldn't say Hashkivenu when you're saying Shema of Arvis right before Alois. Why not? As Rashi says, because since it's Samach Lamed HaShachar, you shouldn't say Hashkivenu she'ein oid zman tchilas shchiva ela seif zman shchiva. It's the end of when people go to sleep. You shouldn't say Hashkivenu. That is what Rashi said. The Rosh brings down various different. The Rosh brings down a Ritz Geis that he says that maybe you shouldn't say the whole bracha of Hashkivenu, maybe just say a part of it. The Rosh doesn't like that. But Tes disagrees with Rashi. Why? It says Taisus Venerli the Azvades man shchivu. Hashkivenu. You should be able to say Hashkivenu, because as long as there are people sleeping, it's still a time of Hashkivenu. Since when does the word Hashkivenu only mean that most people have to be sleeping, or that's when you go to sleep? No, Hashkivenu is the time of sleeping. We want Hashkivenu Hashem l'shola and V'amadenu l'chaim l'sholom. We want to. So as long as there's people sleeping, you could say Hashkivenu. This is the Taisus being chaylik on Rashi. Upirish Asar Mikaitzi, and the Asar Mikaitzi disagrees with Rashi. He says, when does this idea of not saying Hashkivenu going on? The Koya Koydem Nates. It's going on the situation of when a person is saying Shema before Nates. What's he saying? He's saying Shema of Arvis. He's saying Shema of Arvis before Nates, right? The second version of Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. The Salig Minei. So the what the Sar Mikaitzi is saying is we don't say the Hashkivenu after Alois. Rashi is saying you don't say Hashkivenu Samach La'alois. When you're saying Kriya Shema next to Alois, you don't say Hashkivenu anymore. Doesn't Sar Mikaitzi? No, you can say Hashkivenu, no problem. That's not an issue. But you can't say Hashkivenu after Alois. So even though there's times when a person's an Einus, he has to say Kriya Shema of Arvis after Alois, before Nates, that's fine, but then you don't say Hashkivenu. Just as a side note, as a historical point, just to understand, the Sar Mikaitzi was Reb Shimshon ben Reb Shimshon Mikusi. It's a place in the northeast of Paris. He was a student of the Ri. Why is he called the Sar Mikaitzi? His name was Reb Shimshon ben Reb Shimshon Mikusi. What does it mean? Reb Shimshon ben Reb Shimshon means his father died before he was born. He was named after his father. But why do they call him the Rash Mikusi? So the Chida writes in the Shem HaGedolim, because Rash is like Ani V'Rush, like it's like poor. So instead of calling him the Rush, they called him the Sar. It's cute. I just don't understand about the Rash Mishans. Right? Shimshon Mishans, he's no problem being called the Rash. I don't know. I'll leave that for another time. Okay, so this is a machlekes again. When there's a situation when you're allowed to say Hashkivenu until. Next Gemara, it's Ki Asar of Yitzchak Bar Yosef. Right? If you remember on Vavam Abayz, we had the Gemara said Ki Asar of Dimi. All right, Rav Dimi said that there was a bird in the Krach Ayam whose name was Krum. It was a Krum, a bird. No, the name was Krum. Jokes are too early. Okay, So it used to change its colors. When the sun would come out, it would change its colors. Fine. What did it mean, Ki Asur Abdimi? Ki Asur Abdimi means where Abdimi would come from Eretz Yisrael. He would travel between Bavel and Eretz Yisrael. If you look in Shas, you'll see it says a lot of times Ki Asur Abdimi, Ki Asur Ravin. You see Ki Asur Abisal Bar Yosef as we have over here. And you have Ki Asur Shmuel Bar Yehuda. So in the Tos Tanav Amaram, he explains that they used to cycle through, make sure they always had people learning in Bavel and Eretz Yisrael and going back and forth to be able to share the Torah of Bavel and Eretz Yisrael and the Torah of Eretz Yisrael and Bavel. So sometimes you had Reb Dimi. Reb Dimi would come back. They'll make sure they would send Ravin. They always had people coming back and forth. They always keep the dialogue going on whatever halachic shilas and whatever issues were going on. They always kept that dialogue going. So the most famous one is Kiyas Reb Dimi, then Kiyas Ravin, then the next one is what we have over here, Kiyas Reb Yosef, and also we have Kiyas Reb Shmuel Bar Yehuda. Remember that Kiyas is generally speaking when they're coming to Bavel, and Kisalek is when they're leaving Bavel and going to Eretz Yisrael. So what did Rabbi Bar Yosef say? Ki Aser Rabbi Bar Yosef Amar Hadir Achabar B'Chanina Amar Rabbi Shub ben Levi. This whole the idea that Rabbi Achabar B'Chanina said the name of Shub ben Levi that the Allah is like Shemei Chai is La Beferish Itmar Elam Mechlal Itmar. He didn't actually say it clearly, but he said it Mechlal. In other words, we learned it out from a story. What happened? There was a pair of rabbis. They got really drunk at the wedding of Rabbi Shub ben Levi's son. So also came to Rabbi Shub ben Levi. They came to Rabbi Shub ben Levi after the chas and they said, "What should we do? We didn't say Shema. We didn't say Shema yet, and we fell asleep." Rashi doesn't say that. If you look at Rashi, Rashi says the ishtaker v'yeshna v'nirdamu ad la'achar amod hashachar. They fell asleep and they got up after Alois. Right? Rashi doesn't say it was a mitzvah dance that went on to Alois. Rashi didn't know about the mitzvah dance to Alois. That's a new invention of weddings. Yes. So they fell asleep. They wake up. It's after Alois. Amazing, right? What do you see from this Gemara? Rabbi Shimon Levi's up. The son's chasana. He made a whole massive chasana. He's awake. All right, he's awake. So they come to him and they say, Rebbe, what do we do? They said, say Shema. And here we have a famous line, appears a number of times in Shas. He said, Omar Kedai Reb Shimon l'smech Allah b'shas hadchak. You can rely on Shimon Meichai in Shas hadchak. Again, this is not the honest way the Mechaber made it out. Mechaber made it out, right? It was somebody's going melistim Mechayis Ros. But again, we're talking about a situation where a person is also an honest because he was drunk, he fell asleep, he didn't have a chance to say Shema. And now he got up, and it's after Alois. What should he do? He should say Kriya Shema Shal Arvis without an issue because you can rely on Shimon Meichai b'shas hadchak, which then comes out that I guess mention a couple of things. Number one, the relationship of Shub ben Levi and Shimon Meichai is one that we know. The Gemara says in the Ksubis in the seventh parak. The Gemara says there that Shub ben Levi got into Gan Eden, right? He took the sword of the Malach HaMaves, and he met. Shimon Meichai said to him, "Are you the Shub ben Levi that they say great things about? Did you have a rainbow in your time?" So he said, "Yeah." So he said, "Oh, you must not be that great." Now the truth of Shub ben Levi didn't have a rainbow in his time, but he didn't want to be a show off. So he said that he did in fact have a rainbow, but they had some sort of a connection, some sort of relationship. They both clearly were involved in the esoteric. So anyhow, Rabbi Shimon Levi says that you could learn Shimon Meichai b'shas hadchak, and practically what that means then for us is that even though Rabbi Gamliel says that you have until Alois to say Kriya Shema Arvis, nevertheless, b'shas hadchak you can even go until Nates to say Kriya Shema Arvis. You even have a later period of time. Okay, that is the Gemara until here, and now we move on. Ma'aseh shebo banav. So remember the last part of the Mishnah that the children of Rabbi Gamliel came home from a party, and they also had a question about Shema. So the Gemara asks about Hashtalei Shmuel Hadar Gamliel. These are Rabbi Gamliel's kids. They don't know a sheet that you can able to say Shema until Alois. Like of course they must have heard this over the years, no? So Achi Kamrele, this is what was going on. They didn't ask him what Yeshita is. They asked him this. They said, Rabbanan Plige Eluyach. They said, there's the rabbis argue on you, and when there's a machlekes between Yachan and Ram, the is like the rabbin. Maybe the Rabbanan really hold like you, and they really hold until Allah. And this they say until Chatzos is to make sure people don't do Aver. So I'm a Rabbanan Kavasis Firlu. He says the Rabbanan really hold like me. And you are in fact required to say the Shema. And this that they say until Chatzos is in order to keep people far away from doing an Avera. Rashi over here, these two Rashis brings down just quickly to Chazar Ibr, the basic sheet that we said before. Look at Rashi Peligi Rabbanan Peligi Aliyach. Kloimar says Rashi, Mi Peligi Rabbanan Alecha the Amri Ad Chatzos Dafka Kamri. This that we said the Rabbanan hold until Chatzos is Dafka. Loy Mashmalu V'Shach B'Cha Kolz Man Shchiva. They don't say V'Shach B'Cha the entire time a person's sleeping. Kolz Man Shederech B'nei Adam L'Sasek Leilech V'Lishkav. It's an earlier period of when the last time when people are still going to sleep, which is around Chatzos. Right? On this, the Rabbanan would disagree with Rabbi Lezer. Why? Because Rabbi Lezer severely because Rabbi Lezer holds that you only have until Ashmur Rishona to go to sleep. Right? That's the only time when normal people are going to bed, and therefore you can only say Shema until that time. That's considered V'Shach B'Cha. Well, Rabbanan say not when most people are going to bed until the end of the first Ashmur, but when there are still people going to bed, which would be then until Chatzos, and that would be B'Dafka. But you, Ben Gamliel, you disagree with them, and you hold that no. And when you're able to say Shema is the entire time when people are actually sleeping. Shachma doesn't mean going to sleep; it means when people are sleeping. And therefore you say you could do until Allah. But when you have machlokes with the Yachan and a Ram, you always go with the Rabbim. Says Rabbi Gamliel, no, they agree with me. They absolutely hold. Maybe they hold like you says Rashi. That they agree that you have really the entire night to say Shema because you have as long as people are sleeping. But the Gamran says it's just harchaku. They lose dares to inspire people to move to make sure that they say the Shema Mil Hecha the ishness of persons and aynes. But the Kar Kadim Chatzos at Dain Zman Chiyuvahu Mechayvim Nafki they create Shema Zmane. And of course, it's still able to say Shema and the Yotze even after Chatzos until Allah. So it comes out that the actual halacha everybody agrees until Allah. The Chacham made a harchaka by Chatzos, but it comes out if a person and didn't even say Shema until Allah. He says it even for the nighttime, even until the next he can still say the Kriya Shema of Arvis. Why? Because there's still people who are sleeping then. So you see various different levels of Shas Chak, of Einus, etc. But the ideal is a person should say Kriya Shema Shal Arvis before Chatzos. Good? Okay, continues the Gemara. Do you remember the rest of the Mishnah? The Mishnah said that it wasn't just on this, that he said these things, but he said it on a bunch of other things as well. He mentioned, if you remember the Mishnah, the Chalam Ve'varim, right, etc. So the Gemara says as follows. Is Rabbi Gamliel the one who says until Chatzos that he has to say V'lo zu b'vad? So what's going on here? This is what Rabbi Gamliel is trying to tell his kids. Even according to the rabbis who hold that you have the mitzvah only till Chatzos, you should know they really hold mitzvah sachiyal menashachar. And this, they said, until Chatzos is really just to keep people from doing an avera. Fine. Next part of the Mishnah. Before we do the next part of the Gemara, I want to go back to the Mishnah on base and remind you of a Rashi in the Mishnah. The Rashi in the Mishnah is the last Rashi in the Mishnah of Kedela Harchi Ka'adam Min Avera. Look at Rashi. What did Rashi say? Va'asuram ba'achila kaidem zmanon. Right? We want to be making people far away from doing any averas. So what did we do? The Mishnah told us that various things the rabbis say ad chatzos, even though we really have until later. The example was hekta chalav and ve'var, mitzvah sanashem shachar, v'chol nacham le'mechad, right? Things that are eaten for a day. You have basically the day that you shechted, and that night, ad shihala shachar, you have until the alois in order to be able to do it. So what do the chacham say till chatzos? They'll hack gadam and avera. Says Rashi, the asrum ba'achila kaidem zmana. The rabbis made it usher to eat it even before the zman. So you shouldn't come to a situation where, God forbid, you're going to eat it after Allah's, be chayiv carbs. And then you're going to be chayiv carbs for doing that. So therefore they made a zman, a gate, that'll be considerably earlier, so you shouldn't wind up in that situation. So too, they did the same thing by Kriyash Shema. In order to inspire a person, they should move quickly and shouldn't say, "Oh, I have more time. I have more time." And then the Allah is going to come and he's going to be, missing this man again. It's not you have a specific heter in a situation of eines that you could say it after Allah, but you're not supposed to. The real mitzvah is until Allah. Then Rashi adds one more point. This idea that hektar chalav ve'evarim, that the Mishnah had said, mitzvahs and ashiyalam and ashachar, says Rashi, the rabbis never said al chatzos on there. The only reason why this is being brought over here is to tell you that things that have a thing to be done at night, they can be done the whole night. The whole night is kosher for the being cutting the omer and for the hektar chalam ve'evarim. So when it comes to hektar chalam ve'evarim, there's no hakana of the rabbis that said you should do it until chatzos. It was always until alais. Unlike the other things, by karbanis, where they said that you can only do it until chatzos. For hektar chalam ve'evarim, it was always until alais. Okay? Continues the Gemara. Hektar chalam ve'evarim, right by the two dots. The hektar chalam ve'evarim says the Gemara, you know what's missing from the Mishnah? V'ilu achilas psachim like tani. Did you notice that? It doesn't say in the Mishnah anything about eating Korban Pesach. And come on, we all know that depending on how Hamish of a family grew up in, you know how makbid they are to finish the Seder, right? So you can have your Afikaim before Chatzos, right? The more Litvish families, they're going to go through Magid Shik Chak. The more Hamish families, they'll be darshaning what this rabbi said and that rabbi said, and like, Chatzos, all right, it's fine, right? So the Gemara is asking, but forget our Seder today. What about the Korban Pesach, actually eating the Korban Pesach? Why don't we say that the Korban Pesach is in this Mishnah as well? That it has either until Chatzos or until Alais. Why don't we say something about it? We don't say anything. Very mini. So the Gemara says, I'll ask you a kasha. I'll ask you a steer. You're telling me that the mitzvah is for sure until you have until chatzos. According to Chacham, that's the only mitzvah. Gemara says no, you have until Allah. Very mini. I'll ask you a steer. Kriya Shema Arvis, Hala Belele Psochim, V'Achilas Pesach. When it comes to Kriya Shema of Arvis, Hala Belele Psochim, right? Because you have to say Hala with the Korban Pesach when you ate it, and eating the Korban Pesach. Says this Bryce says what? Mitzvah san achiyala Amud Hashachar. You have a mitzvah until Amud Hashachar. You have a mitzvah that goes until Amud Hashachar. So we're just saying now that the mitzvah is. If we're saying that the mitzvah is until Chatzos, if you have a steer, it's telling you that you could do it until Alais. So the Chacham wanting to make a gezerah, but here they're saying that the mitzvah is until Alais. What do you mean? Right? You hear the question? If the Chachamim are talking, then the Chacham should say the mitzvah is until Chatzos. Yes, we know that practical Memnil says they really have until Alais. But that's like only for certain people to know. Like that's not something you're going to disseminate. You want people to be reason that they should do it by Chatzos, not to leave over. But here you have a clear bryce that says, sounds like the Chacham are talking, and it's saying the mitzvah of Kriya Shema of Arvis is until when? Is until Alais. Right? And that includes also the mitzvah of Korban Pesach, etc. So what does the Gemara answer? I'm Rabbi Yosef, like Kash, I'm Rabbi Lezer ben Azai, Rabbi Akiva. It's the difference between Lezer ben Azai and Rabbi Akiva. What's the difference? The Tanya, we have a brisa that tells us the following. We have one pasuk that tells us that you eat the meat of the Korban Pesach on this night. We have another pasuk that tells us also in Parshas Bay. Hashem says, I'm going to pass over Mitzrayim, but Laila Zeh. So Mala Halon Chatzos, just like when HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to pass over the houses. When did HaKadosh Baruch Hu pass over the houses? By Chatzos. So too, Avkan HaChatzos. So too, when is it you're allowed to eat the Korban Pesach until? Until Chatzos. Amalei Rabbi Akiva. So Rabbi Akiva says, what are you talking about? V'aloi nemar b'chipazoin. Right? The pasuk tells us b'chipazoin. Right? The pasuk says, you have to eat it b'chipazon. So when you have to eat it in haste, you have to eat it in a hurry. When until they They went in haste until they actually left, which means when did they leave? They left by Alois. So when can you eat the Korban Pesach until Alois? So im came matam aleim balayla zeh. And what does it mean when the pasuk says v'achlas habasar balayla zeh that they could eat the Korban Pesach at night? What do you mean? They could eat it all the way until Alois. So yachli hey nechal kikachim bayom. You would think, according to the Rebbe Kiva saying, that you could eat it when, like kachim. When can you eat kachim? You eat it by day when you shecht it, and then that night. So you would think that Korban Pesach would be similar, that you could eat it from when you shecht it until the end of the night. Tamalayim balayla. You cannot eat the Korban Pesach before the evening. You cannot eat it before the day. That's why it says the pasuk tells them v'achlas habasar balayla hazeh. Right, because there are other kachim kalim, right? You shech l'shlam or something, you can start eating it right away. Right, you're shechting the Korban Pesach before the evening. The whole class has to shech the Korban Pesach. Whoever's there to be early regal. So the shechting already after chatzos, they start shechting the Korban Pesach. So you have hours before you're gonna roast it. You have hours before you're gonna eat it. Now, of course, they had work to do. They have to skin it. They have to do various things. Sure, it takes time, but you have time. No, even if it's ready to be eaten, you still can't eat it until the nighttime. That's what it means when Paz says B'layla Hazeh. You can't be learning out this Zer Shav B'layla Hazeh, B'layla Hazeh. The Rebbe Elazar ben Azariah is doing it to tell you that you have only until Chatzos. According to Rabbi Kiva, you have until Alais. So it would come out then that it wouldn't be a stira this with our Mishnah, because this brisa that's telling you that you have until Amud Shachar is going with Rabbi Akiva. Okay, fine. Continues the Gemara. Mishlom with Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. It makes sense to say, according to Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, this like Zer Shava, that he has the Zer Shava of B'layla Zeh, so it's Shech L'Michtav LeHazeh. That's what makes sense in the pasuk when it says B'layla Zeh 2 times. El Rabbi Akiva, Hi Hazeh, my Avidlei. What does Rabbi Akiva do with this Hazeh? He's not using Zer Shava, so why does it have to say V'achlas Habasar B'layla Zeh? What do you mean? What else would it be? Right? He doesn't need a Gezer Shabbos. So why does it have to say Hazeh? So the Gemara answers, it's coming to be mamait, the possibility of thinking that maybe you had a second night to eat the Korban Pesach. What do you mean? I mean, I might have thought to say, Pesach kachim kalim. Ushlam kachim kalim. Just like a Pesach is kachim kalim and a shlam is kachim kalim. So mashlam nechol shnayom v'layla echad. How long are you able to eat a shlamim? You're able to eat it for 2 days and a night, meaning when you shech the shlamim, you have that day, you have the next night, and then the next day, and then is the end of what you're able to eat the Korban shlamim. So too, you would think that by the Pesach you have the same thing. Af Pesach nechol shtei leilos b'makim beis yom. So maybe by the Pesach also you would say, even though you can't eat it at the beginning of when you shecht it, you can't eat it by day. You have to wait till the night. So the same way you have Shnei Yom V'Layla Echad for the Shlam, maybe you have Shnei Leilas V'Yom Echad for the Pesach. So when would you do it? You would eat it at essentially, you would have the first night to eat it, you have the day, and then you have a second night to eat it. So maybe that's what you would say by the Korban Pesach, just like other Kachim Kalim. It should have at least 2 times when you're able to eat it. So the same way that the Shlam has 2 days and a night, so maybe this will be 2 nights and a day. Maybe you might have thought that. So says the Gemara. Balayla hazeh hu noichal ve'ein noichal balayla afi. You only have this night to eat it. This sounds like a bit of a stretch, right? But nevertheless, this is the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says, "What are you talking about? No way." Right? The pasuk says you can't leave it over until the morning. And whatever is left over until the morning, you have to burn. So I don't need Hazeh to tell me only this night and not another night. It's an open pasuk that tells you if it lasts till the morning, you got to burn it. Of course, I don't need a special limit from Hazeh to teach you this. That's why Hazeh is available for the Gzer Shav. This is the opinion of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. So Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, Melissa Shir B'Menat Biker Nafka. Rabbi Akiva, what does Rabbi Akiva do with this? It's an open pasuk. Imei hasam havamina my biker sheni. So Rabbi Akiva will say, no. Biker means on that second morning, because you have 2 nights to eat it. All right. Rabbi Elazar Amar Lacha called biker rishonu. Whenever it says biker, we're talking about that day. We're not talking about the second day. Come on. So this is the machlekes between Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah and Rabbi Akiva As to achilas psatim, according to Belez ben Azariah, you can eat it until chatzos. According to Rekiva, you can eat it until alois. Now the Gemara says it explains a little further. We have just a minute more. We'll just have to finish this. The Hani Tanoi Kahani Tana. This machlokes of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah and Rabbi Akiva is the same machlokes we see elsewhere. The Tanya of another machlokes Tanam. The Tanya have a brisa that says Shom Tizbachas Pesach Ba'erik V'Hashemesh Mei Tzeitzach Min Mitzrayim. Tells us in the Varim that you shech the Korban Pesach Ba'erev Kivay Hashemesh. Mayet Tzeitzach Min Mitzrayim. There are three different times. Erev, Kivay Hashemesh, and Mayet. What is all these three times? Rabbi Elazar, this is not Rabbi Elazar ben Azar, Rabbi Elazar Agadol, Rabbi Elazar ben Horkinus says, Rabbi Elazar Omer be'erev ata zoicha ve'ach, you shecht in the afternoon, right, getting towards the evening, u'chavay hashemesh ata oichel, and when the sun sets, actually then you can eat it, u'mayit teis chamim Mitzrayim, and the time that they left Egypt was at the morning. Then what do you do at that time? Ata seirif, that's when you would burn it, because that would be the end of the time to eat it. Rabbi Shua Omer, he agrees with the first part. Be'erev ata zeveach, you shecht in the afternoon after chatzos. When the sun sets, that's when you can eat it. And how long are you able to eat it until? And you could eat it until the time of the morning. So according to Rabbi Elazar, when does it mean Moed Tzeitzchem Mitzrayim? Moed Tzeitzchem Mitzrayim is when you burn it. And according to Rabbi Shua, what does it mean Moed Tzeitzchem Mitzrayim? That's how long you can eat it until. So we want to say it's the same exact machlokes. In other words, according to Rabbi Elazar, you can only eat it till chatzos, but you burn it in the morning. And according to Rabbi Shua, you can actually eat it all the way until the morning, all the way until alois. And that is when you would have to burn it as well. So Amar Abba Hakol Moedim Shenigel Yisrael Mitzrayim Lo Nigel Ela Be'erev. Everyone agrees that when the Jewish people actually left Mitzrayim, they left Mitzrayim only in the they when they were goyal from Mitzrayim, when they were deemed from Egypt, that happened in the evening. Pasuk says that the Jewish people were leaving Egypt that night. But when they actually left, they only left by day. They left after the morning after the Pesach, after they brought the Korban Pesach. So Aman Nechlaku Ashas Chipazin. What is the machlekes here between these various Tanoim? It's on what we call Chipazin. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah saw Chipazin in Mitzrayim, but the Chipazin is the haste of the Egyptians that they were pushing the Jewish people to leave. So therefore, he says that you have for the chipazon of the Mitzrayim, but they were chipazon by chatzos. That's when you're able to eat until. Rabbi Kiva said, "My chipazon of the Yisrael." We're talking about the chipazon of the Jews. When the Jews were actually leaving in haste, when did they leave? In the morning, and that's why you can eat until the morning, according to what Rabbi Kiva wants to learn. Did they really leave at night? Right? So the Geula takes place in parts. In the night, they were already free, but they actually only left by day. Have a wonderful Shabbos.